Hello. Uh, Today I'm going to discuss about what is Java Spring Boot. Um, I will deep dive into. I will give an introduction. What is the Spring Boot framework? Why we used it? I'll explain that. You can see I found this blog in the internet. So it is explaining Spring Boot is a Java-based tool for developing web apps and microservices. It is an open source tool. Spring Boot is nothing but a framework, but it is an open source tool. Easier to use Java based framework to create microservices and web application. Okay. So developers all over the world start their coding journey learning Java, but flexible and user friendly Java is a developer favorite for variety of apps. We all know that, right? But the main problem is dependency injection. Okay, while Java may be easy to use, easier to learn language, the level of complexity to build, debug, deploy Java application sometimes is difficult. This is due to, when we create multiple classes, multiple entities, POJOs, we need to create the object of one object into another class, right? So that may increase the complexity basically. That is what he is explaining here. This guy is explaining this block. So when we are creating in the complex application, we may need to create thousands of classes, then how do you utilize a one class object into another class? You have to create an object of other class into another if you are using a plain Java without any framework, right? So what is the significance of framework? Significance of framework is dependency injection. So we can manage the dependencies in a configuration file rather than going to each and every class and creating a dependency of one object into another. So Spring Framework, it simplifies that. It provides us a single XML configuration where we can actually define all the dependencies of classes. Let's say class A is having a dependency of class B, class B is having a dependency of class C. Then we can actually specify the dependency and also the properties that we are using, right? So in a single place we can manage the dependencies. So you see, this is here he is explaining entire application framework, large bodies of pre-written code that developers can use and add their own code as their needs dictate. These frameworks lighten the developer's load for almost any need, whether they are developing mobile or web apps or working with desktop applications or APIs, application programming interface. Framework make creating apps quicker, easier, more secure by providing reusable code tools to help the different elements of the software development project altogether. So that is the significance of the frameworks. It simplifies the development process. It is having already predefined modules, tools, functions, so you don't need to write the boilerplate code from the scratch. You can utilize the existing stuff from the Spring Boot framework. You can see the family of Spring projects began in 2003 as a response to the complexity of early Java development and provides support for developing Java applications. You can see it here, right? Java Spring Boot is one of the specific modules that is built as an extension of the Spring framework. So what is the difference between Spring and Spring Boot here? Spring is the initial framework. It is an open source Java based app framework that covers many smaller projects under its umbrella. Okay, and you can say Spring Boot is also there. Okay, Spring Boot is also there, and along with the Spring Boot, other Spring projects include Spring Data, Spring Cloud, Spring Security. Okay, these are all the Spring Boot tools, modules as part of the framework, right? You can develop applications very easily using all these Spring Boot, Spring Data, Spring Cloud, Spring Security. And microservices is one of the architectures, and we all know that Initially we follow client server model architecture. After that it is a three-tier architecture, model view controller. After that n-tier architecture, distributed architecture. Now microservices architecture is also one of the architectures that is being used nowadays. Microservices is nothing but when you have a specific functionality. If the functionality is a complex, then we will divide that into submodules. Okay, for each functionality, for each requirement, we will create independent atomic service. That way it will be self-contained and independent service, reusable service. So that simplifies the complex system into very understandable microservices. So that's why even the scalability is also very simple. If I want to scale specific services, I can scale it. And the reusability is there. Once you develop any specific service for particular requirement, next time you don't need to develop that. You can already use it because it's kind of object oriented scenario in the form of microservices. If for a particular functionality, if a microservice is built, you don't need to develop again that API, right? We can utilize that. So dependency injection is a design technique used to achieve inversion of control. Basically, we have to create a loosely coupled system. Objects should not be tightly coupled when we are injecting the dependencies into other. So this kind of technique is called inversion of control. We use the dependency injection to achieve the inversion of control. So what is convention over configuration? Convention over configuration, sometimes called coding by convention. It is concept used in application framework to reduce the number of decisions that a developer has to make. Right? It adheres to the don't repeat yourself principle to avoid writing redundant code. Coding by convention strives to maintain the flexibility while allowing the developer to only write code for the unconventional aspects of the app they are creating. So when desired behavior of the app matches the conventions established, the app will just run by default without having to write configuration files. Developer only need to explicitly write configuration files if the desired behavior strays from the convention. So we got it right. So that is why it is a convention over the configuration. Most of the time we have to make something as a reusable. Okay, if you are building something, so next time the developer, they don't need to build anything because they have to reuse it. That is the object oriented reusability is one of the factor paradigm, right? So it is one of the possibility, one of the good property. So what is it? It is the open source framework. You see, Spring framework is Spring Boot. Spring is the open source, basically initial framework. It was developed. Later on, Spring Boot is an extension module. So it introduced a lot of annotations. So simplify, avoid a lot of complex configuration files also. What does it do? Provides flexible, complete configurable dependency injection. You can see Spring Boot, we can create standalone Spring applications. We can just run immediately without need to for annotations XML configuration. When should I use Spring? When you want flexible, unopinionated approach to remove dependencies from your custom code to implement very unique configuration to develop enterprise application. When to use Spring Boot? To develop REST API, ease of use, to get quality apps running quickly and reduce development time, to avoid writing up boilerplate code. That time you have to use Spring Boot. But if you want to build an enterprise application, most of the people prefer Spring Boot itself. If you want to build a API kind of microservices architecture, then go for Spring Boot. What is its key difference? Dependency injection. We generally call dependency injection is the benefit of the Spring framework. Spring Boot is auto configuration because it is providing a lot of starter dependencies. If you simply specify the annotations, it will auto configure everything. It will auto configure your data sources, it can auto configure your properties. Okay, it can auto configure actuators. Even actuators are there. So much auto configuration is there with the Spring Boot. Does it have embedded server? No. Spring, there are no servers. Once you build a project, you have to wrap it up to the WAR file or ER file, enterprise application or web application. Then you have to deploy that in the server, whether it is JBoss, WebSphere, or Tomcat, whatever it is. The Spring Boot comes with built-in HTTP servers like Tomcat Jetty, standalone and embedded servers. You can run that on fly. Once you complete the changes, immediately you can run and test it there itself. How it is configured? Spring Framework provides the flexibility, but its configuration has to be built manually. You say Spring Framework provides the flexibility. Its configuration has to be built. We have to deal with the configurations manually, right? Whether you are using XML file for configuring the things, or sometimes you may use annotations, or sometimes you may use Java based configuration. You have to configure them manually, right? You have to developer has to take the responsibility of configuring these dependencies, maintaining the dependencies, making sure the inversion of control is achieved properly, right? He has to take care of that. Spring Boot configures Spring and third-party frameworks automatically by default convention or configuration principle. As I told you, so much auto configuration things are available with the Spring Boot. You can actually follow the convention or configuration principle. Okay, it does automatically everything. You don't need to do anything. You have to follow convention. Do I need, okay, other difference is, do I need to know how to work with the XML? Definitely. In the Spring, knowledge of XML configuration is must and should. You have to learn that. You have to understand how we can configure, how we can actually create the dependencies of classes, how we can provide ID for each and every class dependency, how we can inject that particular ID into another class, and how you can inject the properties. Let's say Pojo is having a properties, how you inject those properties. All these things and knowledge is required. Spring Boot does not require any XML configuration because it is auto configuration mechanism is there. You can simply specify all the properties in auto application.properties file, and it will auto configure everything, including the data source itself. Are there CLI tools for dev and testing apps? Spring Framework alone does not provide CLI tools for developing testing apps. Okay, the Spring Framework is basically, it provides a flexibility. You can customize the all dependencies. You can actually manage the inversion of control with a single XML file. It does not provide any CLI tools for developing testing apps. Okay, you have to generate the artifact, whether it is a jar file, WAR file, or ER file, and you have to deploy that in a specific server. And you have to make sure when you are deploying a specific server, you have to provide those configurations properly, data source details in XML in the configuration details. That is also kind of a complexity with the Spring Framework, but it is a standard thing. Most of the clients, the companies, they are using Spring for developing enterprise grade applications. They are running very well in production without any issues, and debugging also is very simple, developer friendly, and flexibility. As I told you, Spring as a Spring module, Spring Boot has a CLI tool for developing testing. Spring Boot is coming with the CLI tool. Also, testing dependencies are there, starter dependencies are there. It simplifies the testing process, unit testing or other testing, integration testing is also possible. Okay, CLI tools, we can use the CLI tools. So does it work from opinionated or unopinionated approach? Unopinionated. Spring is unopinionated. Okay, you can see what is the word opinionated? While the word opinionated may sound negative, But both opinionated approach of Spring Boot and opinionated framework have their advantages. Opinionated approach takes the position that there is one way that is significantly easier than others. By design, software limits designers, encouraging them into doing things that is prescribed. Unopinionated approach is adopted for all its solutions require roughly the same amount of effort or complexity. It takes the position that there is no right way to arrive at solution problem. Okay. See, it provides a flexible tools that can be used to solve problem in many ways. Unopinionated approach. Unopinionated frameworks have the benefit of providing lots of flexibility in development, and they put more of a control in developer hands. The main disadvantage with such so much flexibility is the developer has more decision to make and may end up having write more code because of the framework is so open-ended and well unopinionated. So that those are the two different, you can see unopinionated. Spring is unopinionated, Spring Boot is opinionated approach. As I told you, opinionated approach takes the position that there is one way that is significantly easier than all others. Spring Boot features. Spring Boot is coming up with a lot of features, as I told you. Beyond the Spring framework, so many benefits users are there. Spring Boot gives a easier, quicker setup and configure run apps. It eliminates heavy lifting of configuration, right? It eliminates the heavy lifting. You don't need to do lot of configuration. If you take a Spring, developer has to sit and he has to deal with this configuration. The more the application is the complex, the more efforts are required to configure the things, dependencies. Developers can jump right in and use the Spring Boot without ever having to learn underlying Spring Boot. That is the significance of the Spring Boot. You don't need to learn it. You can directly jump in there, utilize the things. You know how Spring Boot features help here? Java programming, streamline the Java programming task. Some key features of Spring Boot are standalone application. You can simply develop some application just like writing a standalone Java program and run it and test it there itself. Embedded server, you can use a Tomcat, Jetty, Undertow directly. Just simply, you need to provide the respective dependency in pom.xml. Opinionated. Spring Boot simplifies build configuration providing opinionated starter dependencies, right? Auto configuration is the best thing. So many third-party libraries, whether it is asynchronous messaging related libraries or data source related libraries or cloud related libraries or any other, you can simply specify those. You can configure those libraries and utilize them. NoSQL related libraries, for everything there is a dependency. You simply specify the dependency in XML in dependencies file. If you are using POM Maven project, inside pom.xml you have to specify. If it is a Gradle file, you have to specify the dependency in the respective dependencies file. If it is a AND project, you have to specify the dependencies there. Production ready features. Spring Boot provides production ready features such as metrics, health checks. Actuators concept is there in Spring Boot. I think many of you are aware of that. We can use the actuators. We can actually track the metrics, health checks. External configuration is also there. So main benefits are reduced time in development, increased productivity, decrease the need to write boilerplate code, annotations, XML configuration. Yes, you don't need to write the boilerplate code. XML configuration is avoided. No longer using that XML configuration. So many annotations are there. It simplifies the code. Third thing, integrate apps in Spring project family. Spring Boot apps integrate seamlessly with other projects in Spring framework ecosystem. For example, take Spring Data JPA, Cloud, Spring Security. So many things they can be integrated with the main Spring project. Dev and test tools, CLI command line interface is there. so many dev tools options are there for faster development. Offers plugin tools to make development easier. So all these are use cases of the Spring Boot. I hope this video would be useful for you. I have already given you so many videos on Spring Boot, but this is majorly between Spring and major differences between Spring and Spring Boot. And I hope you understood. Thank you for listening. Um, Thank you very much.